Alright, so we're going to pick up now with the lasso tools. The lasso tools are pretty interesting. As soon as I click on it, you'll notice that I have my contextual menu up here, which I can feather these if I want. You always want to make sure that anti-alias is on, which basically tries to smooth out the pixels. If you look closely at pixels, let's zoom in here. You'll notice that pixels are, you probably know this by now, but pixels are square units of information, right? And what anti-alias does is that it tries to smooth out the edges when you make a selection, so that it doesn't look pixelated. It doesn't look like you're outlining little tiny squares. I can't think of a reason why you would ever want to make sure that anti-alias is checked off. Perhaps there's one out there that I just haven't thought of, but go ahead and keep it on. Feathering, of course, softens the edges a little bit of your selection. And then you've got options here where you can make a selection, and then you can add to your selection simply by clicking that, and then it becomes a selection that's been compounded. Command D will deselect. Now, as you can see here, the lasso tool is a freehand drawing tool, and it depends kind of on your level of skill, how well you do with this particular tool. I'll be honest with you, I'm really terrible at it. I'm just awful. If you have a Wacom tablet, which is one of those side tablets that you can use where you have a pen tool where you can draw your selections, then it becomes a lot more useful. Or if you're just incredibly good at mouse skills, and admittedly I'm not. But I want to show you what you can do with it. So obviously you can freehand it, and you'll notice as soon as I get close here, there we go, it'll automatically close that selection for me, right? So if I go here and I just let go, it's automatically going to close that selection. Now I've got two things selected. Command D will deselect this, right? Now, underneath your free selection, you've got other choices. You have the polygonal lasso tool, which I actually think is pretty useful, and the magnetic lasso tool, which, people have a love-hate relationship with. Mine is more of a hate relationship, but don't let that bias you. You may find this a really useful tool. First, we're going to take a look at this polygonal lasso tool, and I'm going to zoom in just a little bit. Command plus will zoom us in. Take my spacebar and move a little bit. So the polygonal lasso tool is really nice because it lets you lay down certain points, right? So if I click, it puts a point down for me, and then I can go elsewhere and click again and make another point, and I can come over here and click again and make another point. And if you've got a lot of curves, it's not that helpful, but if most of your selection is made up of lines, I wouldn't actually do it around this because this is just a little too curvy. But you can kind of see what's happening here. Basically what it's doing is it's laying down straight lines for you, right? So we'll just go right here. And what's interesting is, as soon as I get back to where I started, I'll get this little 0. You see that O that's appearing as soon as I get close? And what that's saying is this selection is closed. This path has been closed off. You have come full circle, so to speak. So if I click here, then I'll get my selection, right? And again, you have the same options that you have with your other selection tools. You can feather it, and you can refine the edge. See, this is actually not bad. This is not what I would see in professional quality work. I wouldn't use this to get any kind of curvature, but I want you to see how it functions. And we'll go ahead and cancel that. Okay, so that's how the polygonal lasso tool works. It does really well. Let's zoom out for a second. It does really well with areas that have lots of sharp angles and not lots of curves. Okay. The other tool that I want to show you is the magnetic lasso tool. And this is a pretty interesting thing. What it's doing is it's trying to look for edges. Okay, so let's zoom in so we can see this little guy at work. And I can tell right away it's going to be a little wonky because this image has been compressed so much that you're starting to get some of these JPEG artifacts. Again, this is one of the dangers of working with images on the web, which is where I happen to get this one for this exercise. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start here up in the corner of Bambi's, what is that, armpit? Leg pit? I don't know what that is. But right up here in the corner. And I'm just going to click, and then I'm going to start I'm not doing anything at all. All I'm doing is moving the mouse. And did you see what had just happened? It laid down a point, right? If I don't like that, I could just simply delete it, and it'll get rid of the point, right? And now I can backtrack. Alright, there it goes. It's laying down a point. So what it's doing is it's trying to find edges for me, which is really quite nice and quite handy. If you have a very clean, crisp image with a very clear distinction between colors and textures, the magnetic lasso tool can actually be really helpful for you. It's not helpful with images that have lots of JPEG artifacts like this one that we're looking at, because you can see the muddiness that's taking place around Bambi's leg. And it's not good with images that don't have lots of clear distinctions between colors and textures. So we'll just continue to go along here and just lay down another point. And it's actually doing not a bad job. Not a bad job at all. And if I accidentally go out here, what's going to happen? Oh, it's laying down a point there. Uh-oh. Delete that. Delete that. Come back. Come back. Come back. So you can correct. It's not bad. And see, that's moving a little too far in. I want to go back. And if I want to go back and actually lay a point in, let's delete that because it's automatically doing it for me. I can actually click and lay the point in manually if I want, and give that magnetic lasso tool a little bit of a guide to go along with. See, it's just curving in just a little bit too much. I don't like that. I'm going to keep it here and lay down another point and another point. And these points I'm actually doing manually. Right. So I'm gonna close out this selection. I'm just gonna kind of loosely go around here, and you can see. Yeah, see that jump that it just made? Sometimes it's not the smartest thing in the world. But I'm just gonna let it do its thing. And I'm gonna come up here. I'm just gonna lay down a click here and go across and close that selection out. And there you can see it is not the smoothest selection in the world. Again, I want to zoom in a little bit so you can take a look at those dancing ants. Do you see how right in here it sort of jumped ship on me and it went from the interior of the black line to the exterior of it? That's kind of the issue that you have sometimes with the magnetic lasso tool. But again, there's a lot of JPEG artifacts going on here, and it's not the best use of this tool, even though it looks as though you would have a good use with it because it has all these flat colors. The problem is all these little JPEG artifacts get in the way. But it's not a bad tool to use. And again, it's got similar options up here, so you can feather it, you can control the width, you can control the contrast, and so basically what these tools do is they deal with the sensitivity, so how often it's going to set points, and what it's looking for when it's setting points. So if I hover over that, it's going to set the contrast of the edge to consider for the path. So if you want a sharper contrast or a less contrast, you've got a lot of control over it, which is really useful. The frequency is how often it's going to set those points and so forth, right? So it's a good tool to use if you're willing to sort of negotiate its idiosyncrasies, which is actually the case with every single tool inside of Photoshop. So that's the magnetic lasso tool. In the next exercise, we're going to be getting into one of my favorites. We'll be getting into the quick selection tool and the magic wand tool.